Enemy is fear. Part 1. The lie. Hiding in your mind. There's a voice in your head. It sounds like you. It wears your tone. It borrows your memories. But it's not you. It's your mind, trying to protect you by preparing you for things that haven't even happened yet. You know the voice. The one that says, what if they leave? What if I fail? What if this feeling never goes away? What if I'm not enough? Again, it's the voice of fear. But not the kind that protects you from fire. The kind that burns you from the inside out. This fear doesn't come from presence. It comes from projection. It isn't the enemy of courage. It's the enemy of love. Because where fear lives, love cannot. Let's break it open. Fear is your mind imagining a future where you don't have what it takes. Where the worst happens. Where no one shows up. Where everything crumbles and it's your fault. And because the mind is creative and deeply insecure, it builds whole movies out of these scenarios. Your body watches that movie and believes it. Heart races, breath shortens, you freeze, you lash out, you shut down, not because of what's real, but because of what's imagined. Fear is a liar, but it's convincing, and it wears the mask of logic. Let me give you an example. You get a text that says, "Can we talk?" Your stomach drops. Your mind jumps into action. Did I say something wrong? Are they mad? Is this the end? Suddenly you're in a spiral. No evidence, just perception. Just a mind trained by past pain to expect punishment instead of clarity. And that spiral, it hijacks your day. You lose presence. You check your phone 100 times. You rehearse every possible response. And here's the twist. The conversation was about nothing. They just wanted to share an idea. But your fear already lived the tragedy. This is how fear works. It's not rational. It's rehearsed. And most people don't live their lives. They live their fears. Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. So when you live in fear, you don't just worry. You embody it. You walk like it. Speak like it. Love like it. Or worse. Not at all. Fear is the root of stagnation, of greed, of jealousy, of control. You don't hoard what you're not afraid to lose. You don't envy when you feel whole. You don't try to dominate when you're not afraid of disappearing. So when you ask why the world looks the way it does, look no further than our relationship to fear. We don't conquer it. We obey it. We call it being smart. We call it being careful. But really, it's just a cage made of predictions. The way of mastery teaches, all suffering arises from resistance to what is, and fear of what may come. So what would it feel like to stop resisting this moment? To stop running simulations in your head and start breathing in your chest? What would it feel like to trust yourself in the present without needing to control the future? Here's your reflection for today. Where has fear made you choose silence instead of honesty? Where has fear told you to stay small, stay hidden, stay safe? And what is fear costing you right now? Emotionally, creatively, spiritually? Let that sit. Because in the next part, we're going to reveal fear's favorite disguise and how it hides inside your most logical thoughts to keep you from ever leaving the cage. The real enemy is fear. Part 2. Fear's favorite disguise. Fear doesn't always show up with shaking hands and sweaty palms. No, fear's favorite disguise is logic. It wears a tie. It speaks calmly. It calls itself being realistic. It says things like, now's not the right time. Let's wait until things settle. Let's play it safe, just in case. Sound familiar? It's fear pretending to be wisdom. Because fear knows if it shows up loud, you'll recognize it. So it dresses up as your inner strategist, the one who's always calculating risk, but never taking any. Let me tell you how fear plays the long game. It convinces you that your dream is irresponsible, that telling the truth will destroy the relationship, that quitting the job is too risky, that asking for what you need makes you difficult, that starting now is dangerous. And you believe it, because fear doesn't yell. It negotiates. Example, you want to start something new. Speak publicly. Launch your art. Have a conversation you've avoided for years. Your soul says, yes. Your fear says, maybe next month. And you say, yeah, maybe next month. 3 years later, you're still on pause. Not because you don't want it, but because you believed a voice that was never there to free you. Let's get more surgical. Fear often disguises itself as perfectionism. If it's not perfect, I'll be judged, so I won't start. Control. If I don't control every outcome, everything will collapse. Overthinking. If I imagine every scenario, I'll protect myself from pain. But here's the truth. Perfectionism is just fear of shame with a better outfit. Control is fear of vulnerability dressed as leadership. Overthinking is fear of uncertainty, pretending to be intelligence. None of these patterns are your power. They are your prison. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. So let's make it conscious now. Here's your reflection. Where is fear running your life while pretending to be practicality? What have you labeled wise that's really just you playing small? What have you called timing that's really just terror? Let's laugh for a second. You ever watch someone spend 20 minutes crafting the perfect text, only to delete it all and send LOL instead? That's not indecisiveness. That's fear wearing the mask of overthinking. Or maybe you've said, I just don't feel ready. Newsflash. Nobody feels ready. Readiness is a lie fear uses to keep you from leaping. You don't need to feel ready. You need to feel real. Because realness, unlike fear, doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be true. The Way of Mastery says, if you knew who walks beside you, fear would be impossible. That means you're never alone. Your soul is not asking you to dive off a cliff without wings. It's asking you to remember you were never the one falling. Here's your homework. 1. Name your fear. Phrases list. 3 things you've been waiting on. Then write the exact phrase fear tells you to justify waiting. Example, I'll speak up when the timing feels right. Fear phrase equals timing. Translation equals I'm scared to be misunderstood. Once named, rewrite it. From fear logic to soul logic. 2. Do one irrational act of truth. Pick something your fear says is too risky. Speak one line of truth. Send one message. Make one imperfect move. Then breathe. Because that breath, the one you take after doing what fear told you not to, is the doorway back to your soul. The real enemy is fear. Part 3. The illusion of control. Here's the lie most of us were raised on. If I can control it, I can survive it. Control became our comfort blanket. We planned, we predicted, we rehearsed every outcome. We tried to outthink disappointment. And guess what? It still came. Because control is an illusion, one that fear sells us at a premium. Let me be blunt. The more afraid you are, the more control you crave. And the more control you crave, the less present you become. Control isn't clarity. It's anxiety with a clipboard. And the people who appear the most together, often the most terrified. Behind the hyperplanner, the over-explainer, the fixer, the micromanager, is a scared inner child just trying to make the world less chaotic. Let me tell you about Devon. Devon had a spreadsheet for everything. Grocery lists, weekly goals, future plans. Even date nights had color-coded slots. To everyone else, he looked dialed in, focused, disciplined, unshakable. But at night, he couldn't sleep. Why? Because control is exhausting. Trying to manage outcomes is like trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. Eventually, you drown in your own effort. What Devon couldn't admit, what most of us can't, is that control was never about being organized. It was about being scared. Scared of failure. Scared of being caught off guard. Scared of surrender. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control, the more out of control you actually feel, because the mind is clever, but it's not God. Buddha said, you only lose what you cling to. So what are you clinging to? An image, a plan, a version of yourself that never messes up. And what would happen if you stopped trying to grip the wheel and let life breathe again? Would everything fall apart, or would something real finally rise? Let me ask you, how much of your stress comes from trying to manage things that were never yours to manage? How many relationships have you suffocated by trying to fix them? How many dreams have you stalled because the path ahead didn't come with guarantees? Let that sting, then let it soften you, because control isn't strength, presence is. The Way of Mastery says, the only choice you ever truly make is between love and fear, and control is always fear in disguise. So let's do something radical. Let's practice trust, not as a belief, but as an action. Homework. Let go on purpose. Identify 3 things you're currently trying to control. Be honest. Could be how someone sees you, how your future unfolds, how fast you heal. For each, write this mantra next to it. I trust that I will meet whatever comes with presence, not panic. Then breathe. And don't just write it. Live it. One decision at a time. Bonus practice. The surrender window. Choose one moment this week. A plan falls through, a delay, a disappointment. And instead of reacting, pause. Ask, what would trust do right now? Then do that, even if it's messy, even if it's slow, even if it makes no sense to your mind. Because your soul is fluent in a language your logic doesn't understand. And it's time to start listening. The real enemy is fear. Part 4. Title, The Ego's Last Stand. Let's get straight to it. The reason fear won't let go is because it's not just protecting your future. It's protecting your identity. The version of you that's been performing for love, achieving to be seen, pleasing to stay safe. That version, the one you built to survive, is terrified to die. And it should be, because you're about to set it down. Here's what most people don't understand. The ego isn't bad, it's just scared. It was built from every time you were hurt, every time you were ignored, every time someone looked at the real you and chose something else. So you built something stronger, or quieter, or funnier, or more put together. And over time you forgot you were pretending. But then something happens. The pretending starts to crack. You hear it in your voice. You feel it when you're alone. You start to ache, not for success, but for honesty. And that's when fear shows up with everything it's got. Because if you stop being who you think you are, who will you be? This is the ego's last stand. Jung called it individuation, the painful process of becoming whole by facing the shadow. Crowley called it true will, the sacred fire beneath the false self, calling you home. The way of transformation calls it the death of self-concept, where the soul reclaims the stage and fear no longer writes the script. But you'll call it terrifying, and holy, and necessary, because when you stop trying to hold the old identity together, you don't fall apart. You fall into truth. Let me ask you, who would you be without the story that says you're not enough? Who would you be if you didn't have to play the role of the strong one, the good one, the one who keeps it together? And can you feel the fear in your chest when you imagine letting that role go? Good. That fear is the boundary between illusion and reality, and it means you're close. Here's where most people back out. They feel the identity start to shake and think something's wrong, when in fact, something sacred is waking up. But that sacred thing, it doesn't need to be liked. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need applause. It only needs your permission to take its first breath. Let's go practical. Here's your 2-step unmasking ritual for this week. 1. Write your survival roles. Ask, what identities have I performed in order to feel safe, accepted, or important? Examples: the overachiever, the peacemaker, the healer, the rebel, the always fine one. Write them down, one by one. Then, next to each one, write, I no longer need this role to be worthy of love. Read it back. Feel the fear rise. Then sit with it, without shrinking. 2. Take off one. Mask in one space. Pick one safe space this week, with a friend, a partner, a journal, a moment alone. And let yourself be messy, uncertain, honest. Say what you've been editing. Cry without apology. Let the real you speak, even if it's quiet. Because once you do it once, you'll realize something powerful. The world didn't end. The ego just lost a little more control. And in that space, you start to live. The real enemy is fear. Part 5. Title: The Shift from Fear to Love. There's something terrifying about letting fear go, because once fear is gone, you're no longer protected by your excuses. Once fear is gone, you're free, and freedom is the one thing the ego doesn't know how to hold. Because now, you can no longer blame fear for why you're not living your purpose, why you're not saying what you mean, why you're not loving with both hands. You're left with only one question: will I choose love or not? Let's be clear. Love is not a feeling. It's a function. It's not butterflies or poems. It's not weakness or passivity. Love is the decision to remain open in a world that taught you to close. Love is showing up when it's easier to disappear. It's forgiving when you could punish. It's creating when you could criticize. It's breathing instead of bracing. And most importantly, it's choosing presence over projection, over and over again. Buddha said, in the end, only 3 things matter: how well you lived, how well you loved, and how well you learned to let go. And letting go is the beginning of love. Letting go of the story, letting go of the mask, letting go of the belief that you must be anything other than the soul that's been quietly burning at the center of your being all along. The Way of Knowing says, love is the only thing that cannot be taken from you, not because it's fragile, but because it's not from here. It's not from the mind. It's from the source, and it doesn't run out unless you choose to forget. So let's remember now. Let's move from fear not just in theory, but in rhythm. Final practice. Love as a way of life 1. The daily love declaration each morning, hand on heart. Today I choose love over fear. Then ask, how would love move through me today? Write the answer. Act on one thing, no matter how small. 2. The fear check-in. When fear arises, don't suppress it. Name it. Breathe into it. Then ask, what does love know that fear forgot? Fear says, what if it goes wrong? Love says, then I'll still be here. Fear says, what if I'm not enough? Love says, you were never required to be perfect, only present. 3. The love audit, weekly. Journal. 3 ways you chose fear this week. Then write how love would have acted instead. Feel the difference. Then decide which one you want to build your life on. This is the reprogramming. Not instant, but eternal. Now ask yourself, what could your life look like if every word, decision, and relationship was filtered through the lens of love, not fear? Not a performative love. Not a polished, socially acceptable love. But the kind of love that tells the truth, holds the mirror, and refuses to abandon itself. That's the love that transforms you. That's the love that changes the world. You've made it to the end of the journey, but really, you're just beginning. Because now you know, fear was never keeping you safe. Control was never your anchor. And the version of you that's been whispering underneath the noise is ready to live, unchained. So if this series cracked something open in you, if it made you uncomfortable, seen, awake, then don't just scroll. Act like this video. Subscribe if you're choosing to live differently now. And in the comments, share this. This is what fear kept me from, and this is what I choose now. Speak it, because when you do, someone else might see it and remember the truth inside themselves. You are not your fear. You are what remains when fear is gone. And you were born to love.